All right, welcome everyone. This is Outside the Box last summer workshop of the Creative Arts series. And we are kicking it off with Mallory Gothelf. But before we do, I want to just share the sponsors, give a shout out. So Mental Health America LA is one of our sponsors, as well as Island 17 DAO, LA Media Consultants, Eco Design Lab, Eco Art Lab, Hugimals, which donated an adorable weighted teddy bear. Well, it's a sloth, Sam the Sloth. Hawaii Marketing LLC and Arc Electronics and the Witslings are all sponsors. And if you aren't familiar with the series, you can find out more information because this will be continued throughout the year. You just visit otbseries.com. Okay, so this workshop is Making Meaning from Adversity with Mallory Gothelf. And she is the founder of Find Yourself Boxes out of Boston. But I do want to introduce our panelists, Salimatu Dambuya, who's joining us from New York, Zane Landon from California, Sophie Yotova, also known as Octafina, joining us from the Netherlands, 9 hours ahead, and Jessica Alejandro. Jessica, did I pronounce your last name correctly? Did we lose Jessica?
Yes, no.
Yes, no.
Like, yes, you pronounced it right.
Okay, perfect.
Yes,
all right, you're fine. Not that you startled me, but okay. Anyway, I'm so glad you could all join us. We have a really fun workshop planned, and we're going to make this really organic, very conversational with some activities thrown in. And we're excited to continue this again throughout the year. All right. Welcome, everyone.
Oh, fantastic.
Hello.
Janine, thank you so much for putting on this series, for finding such wonderful panelists for this workshop. I'm so honored to be virtually sitting in this room with all of you and excited to talk about adversity and talk about all the things we've created from adversity. So I want to thank you all for being here today with me.
I'm so glad to be here. It's so nice to meet you and everyone.
Yeah. So I like to start everything I do with a grounding technique. One, because I'm an incredibly anxious person, and every time I get on Zoom talks, I feel a lot of anxious energy, whether it's excitement or nerves. So I like to have everyone kind of join in on my favorite grounding technique. So we're just going to do some deep breaths and my favorite grounding technique, which is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'll kind of lead us through all of that and walk us through. Okay. So I'll start with having everyone just take a deep breath with me. I'm going to ask you now to just notice and say in your head 5 things you see around the room, 5 things in your space that you notice. And then I'm going to have all of us take another deep breath. Now I'm going to ask you to notice 4 things you can touch in your space right now. Fantastic. And I'm going to have you take another deep breath. Now I'm going to ask you to notice 3 things you can hear around you, whether that be outside or in the space that you're in. And then we'll take another deep breath. Now I'm going to ask you to notice 2 things you can smell, or 2 things you enjoy smelling if there's nothing that's standing out to you in particular in this moment. Excellent. Oh, I love that. You have something right there for it. And then we'll have you take another deep breath. And then we'll end with one thing that you notice that's on the tip of your tongue, a taste, or if you can't taste anything in particular in this very moment, something you enjoy tasting. And then we'll finish with one last deep breath. Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for walking through that with me. I feel a little calmer now. It's something my therapist always makes me do in our sessions, and I always feel much better when we do that. So thank you all for humoring me there.
I like that.
Yeah, I've never done
Yeah.
that before.
It's nice because it helps you focus on all the senses and gets you kind of out of your head, and allows you to focus on some other things. The hardest one I always get is that taste one at the end. I'm like, I can't taste anything right now. What should I be tasting? I should have a drink with me so then I can probably taste that. But usually I'm so ill prepared. I just like make something up when she asks me.
Chocolate.
Oh, okay.
It's empty.
That's my go-to taste I enjoy.
Dark
So
Yeah.
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 Fantastic. So now that we're all feeling a little bit more grounded, hopefully, let's talk adversity. I'm going to open it up. I'm not going to start with myself, actually. I'm going to open it up to all of you. I'm going to have you each talk about, what you've gone through and what you're doing now, kind of your story. And yeah, let's just talk about all of you. We'll do the popcorn. So I'll just pick someone and you pick the next person. So I'll start with the first person I can see on my screen, which is Jessica. We'll start with you.
Okay. So hi, my name is Jessica Alejandro. I am a graduate student. I am a teacher, and I am also one of the New York City team leads for a COVID memorial organization called Yellow Heart Memorial. So my sister is actually the second New York City team lead. We lost our papa, our grandfather, Joseph Anthony Selkowitz, to COVID-19 on March 8th of 2021. As you can imagine, with the pandemic and the unknowns, we lost him at a time where New York City was starting to lift restrictions, and we were told that we were coming back and better than ever, and then he got sick. What made it even harder for us was we stayed away from him for over a year to make sure, we didn't transmit the virus to him. God forbid we had it. And then he ended up, having the virus. So he was our everything, still is our everything. That was our best friend, taught my sister and I how to drive. We used to go on Sunday IHOP dates. We went parasailing in Hawaii, jet skiing in Puerto Rico. He was 78 going on 17, so it was a huge loss to us, and it still is. So at the time, my sister and I both attend, Queens College in Flushing, Queens. And, while we did have counselors at the Health and Wellness Center, and we were fortunate enough to work with those counselors while we were going through our grief journey, unfortunately, there wasn't any mental health resources that were COVID specific. And unfortunately, we were just two, and still are, just two of over 19,000 matriculated students at our college alone. And there's approximately 6 to 7 counselors that are available for everyone. So my sister actually started this idea of creating a virtual COVID-19 support group for students who have been affected by the pandemic, have, experienced a loss, are COVID survivors or COVID long haulers. And we had a pretty surprising turnout. I mean, we had students who lost relatives to other health issues during the pandemic and couldn't see them, and we're trying to finish the semester. We had, mandated health workers. We had one student who was in the hospital for 6 months with COVID and almost died. So we saw this great need, alongside our own grief journey to start this. From then on, we reached out and found Yellow Heart Memorial, which is a national COVID organization. And for those of you who are not familiar, the Yellow Heart is the international symbol for COVID loss. So what Yellow Heart Memorial does is takes yellow hearts, writes loved ones' names and their dates of passing on them, and displays them. And we also advocate for permanent memorials. So after a while of, being active and meeting different people within the COVID grief community, we were asked by the founder, Rosie Davis, and New York State chapter lead, Pablo Lopez Jr., to become part of the organization to represent New York City. So that's what me and my sister have been doing. So, alongside that, we've been starting other mental health initiatives at our college, such as a men's weekly, bi-weekly mental health support group to talk to, male educators who are from minority backgrounds about how they deal with, self-care and mental health and mental wellness, not only aside from being, a male, because as we all know, that's stigmatized in itself, but being an educator. We always have to, no matter what we're going through, pack it in a little box and put it away so we can be there for our students, because 98% of the time we are the only support system our students have. So my sister and I, our journey has really been trying to not overcome our grief, because grief never goes away, but trying to work with our grief and navigate through it by helping others within the COVID community navigate through theirs. So yes, so it's been a very exciting, journey. We're also working with New York State Senator Joseph Piandabo to erect a permanent memorial in New York City. And I was also, like Janine mentioned earlier, selected by Mental Health America to speak to them at their annual mental health conference this past April regarding, what I've done. So coping with COVID and using my grief to create change.
That's amazing.
Wow. I have chills right now. Oh my goodness. I feel like that's going to happen when all of you speak. Wow. That's so powerful. And it's hard to take something like grief that, kind of is going to stick with you. It's something that doesn't fully fade. And they always say time heals wounds, but that's not necessarily always true. That wound remains. It's just, how are you going to shift and shape to make that wound something meaningful so that you can do something with it and work with it in a way that feels good.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, like I mentioned, our school didn't really have anything for us. So, the way we looked at it was, we're two grieving students who are in a depression, and we're trying to create other mental health resources and outlets for students, because the school really didn't think about it. We had administrators actually tell us, well, if you don't bring this to our attention, that we never would have known that there was a need. So, yeah. So, it has definitely helped us, just making sure that other people, not only who are currently going through this, have that support and don't feel alone, but also everything that we do in our daily lives is for him and, in his honor. So
amazing. I remember you telling me, by the way, that you came to school and nobody even said anything to you. And how could people not think that students hadn't lost anyone?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. And this was at the time where, still it's hard to believe and hard to really think about that time where everything was virtual. Mm-hmm. So even more so, students, speaking to professors and everything, a lot of students experience loss. A lot of students were COVID survivors and COVID long haulers, and they couldn't even get in touch with the college because everything was remote. So they didn't really have access to those resources that they were trying to promote. Right. So it was a very awakening thing for the college, because with Yellow Heart Memorial, my sister and I actually did the first Yellow Heart Memorial in New York City and in New York State, especially within the CUNY system, the City University of New York system. Mm-hmm. So we had over 225 names that were submitted from staff, from faculty, and from students of their loved ones lost. And we have it currently displayed at the Benjamin Rosenfeld Library, which is the focal point of our college. And just seeing politicians there and all of, the administrators and the president, the presidential cabinet, and we're like, this is us. This is what happened to us. Mm-hmm. These are, we didn't even touch the surface with how many people, we needed to reach, because unfortunately, we've discussed as well, Janine, Zoom burnout, technological, burnout. So a lot of people miss the emails and everything.
Right.
but just, like, do you see the need for it now? And unfortunately, nothing has really changed, but that's not stopping my sister and I from continuing to do the things that we've done.
Good. Good. All right. I think we need to pass the baton to someone else.
Yes.
Okay.
I pass it to Sophie. My new friend, Sophie.
Yes. I'm about just. I'm looking down. I'm actually doing the thing that calms me down when I'm anxious, because that's what I do. I always create something. And my story is very unusual, and I will definitely do my best to be brief because it is quite lengthy and it is a bit of a roller coaster. But basically, a year ago, I was in suicidal depression. I was in a really difficult place, and I have been struggling with my mental health for over a decade. I started going through depression in college, and my episodes got more and more dense and more severe as the years went by. And then in 2015, I lost my grandmother to vulvar cancer in 45 days. And that experience just shook me in a really way that was not familiar to me until that point. And now that I go back, knowing the whole story, having the full puzzle finally in front of me, that was the moment when my bipolar disorder just emerged, because I was diagnosed within the last year with bipolar disorder type 2 and borderline personality disorder by multiple mental health professionals after I self-diagnosed myself when I was living here in Eindhoven, because I literally got into reading, the DMS-5, the textbook for diagnosing psychiatric conditions, because I have been struggling on my own for such a long time. And when you do that and your mental health starts deteriorating very, very fast, and you go from someone with a successful corporate job who bootstrapped a social enterprise to someone who not supported themselves financially, that's not a great experience, and it's not really easy to talk about. And when you're dealing with all of that, plus you've got severe trauma, plus you've got extremely unhealthy coping skills, plus you grew up in an environment that was the wrongest possible one for you, plus you are conditioned to believe that creativity and playfulness are a waste of time, and you were taught to measure yourself by your accomplishments, and you learn to grind and do the thing, which is the experience of too many people. But when all of that happens together, it's not just a recipe for disaster, it's just the textbook, it's a tutorial for how to get to the edge of suicide where I was last year. Which is when I returned to art, of all things, because I wasn't able to communicate. I couldn't read, couldn't listen, couldn't articulate myself. And I'm a trained journalist. I have degrees in journalism and mass communication, and I have been a storyteller my entire life. And words were just not there for me for a long time. And because I'm a very emotional person too, and a very expressive one at that, plus the bipolar, I needed an outlet, and my hand could move. That's all I could do, which is how I basically returned to art making. And fast forward little over a year, because that began in July 2021. Next week, I'm having my first solo exhibition in the heart of Eindhoven, the place where I hit rock bottom, very close to that place, actually. I'm doing an immersive experience at the intersection of self-care, self-empowerment, and art called Paint to Power, which is everything that I am about, because my thing is just transforming whatever challenge you encounter, because that's the thing about life. You can't really escape without some bruising. So taking that and transforming that through an alchemical process, in my case of art making, into something meaningful, beautiful, or whatever, and just accepting that yes, it is going to happen, and you cannot really control that, but what you can control is what you do with it. And so that's what I've been doing. I have been turning my pain into power consistently and repeatedly. And over the last a little over a decade, I have come up with multiple systems and techniques that use creativity for self-empowerment I'm in the process of launching a creative academy for self-empowerment that basically teaches people how to use their creativity as a superpower and cultivate self-care practices and wellness routines that just help them live better. So yeah, that's my story.
It's amazing.
Unbelievable. There's a line that you said that is now going to stick with me for a really long time. You listed these things that you felt like you couldn't read, you couldn't write, you couldn't communicate, but your hand could still move. There was still something that was still working for you, and that became the thing that you fixated on. Not all the other things that were slipping away, that felt like they were slipping away in that moment, but the thing that you could do. And that to me is so powerful, because it's hard to not get stuck in that. Here's all the things that I can't do because my mental health is really just not going so well right now. You're like, here's the thing I can do. And I'm gonna write that down and put that on my wall.
Look, don't give me too much credit. I was very much stuck on the fact that I couldn't actually finish my homework, because my therapist actually gave me the simple homework of writing down 20 things I enjoy doing. 20 things, could be
That's
anything.
a lot of things.
could not get through the list. Like, I was like, wait, what do you mean enjoy? Like, what is that state? That's unfamiliar to me. Like, it doesn't register anywhere. That's gone. It's inaccessible.
Yeah.
And so just this, I was doing like just random symmetrical shapes and like colorful thingies, and I felt so guilty, so just like a spoiled brat who is completely responsibly wasting my time with something unproductive when I should be getting back to, figuring out how to make money. And I felt like a criminal, and I had to sneak by to draw, which is just so many different kinds of wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Should we jump to Zane? Is this a good stepping point? Do you mind, Sophie, if we jump to
Oh,
Zane?
please.
Okay. All right.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Zane Landon, like I said, from California. I guess my story starts off with, I experienced, mental health feelings, conditions from a very young age, around 5 or 6, from around anger, depression, and anxiety. Luckily, my family was very open to mental health, because a lot of people in my family experienced mental health. So we kind of had a plan in place of what to do. So I was able to see a psychologist for probably around middle school, when I was around 11, to the end of high school, 18. So it was a long time I saw a psychologist. So I'm always an advocate for people to see a psychologist. Maybe you don't need to always see one, but I think it's something that everyone should try, despite what their mental health concerns are. I think it's something that everyone needs. And then, but also growing up, because I'm Hispanic and identify as queer and disabled, so a lot of different identities that were kind of that intersectionally play. And it can be kind of a struggle, because you have to figure out what identities are being impacted, and you also have to figure out each identity at a certain time, because through adversity and advocacy, I was able to discover that I was disabled, because for the longest time I didn't identify that way, because I just didn't know, because it just wasn't something that was informed. And so something that I learned about, and that's what kind of pushed me to become more of a disability and mental health advocate. And one of the hardest things was very similar to probably Jessica's story, was not in March, but in January of 2021, January 7th, my mom passed away. And it was just of course, a very hard thing. And it was not something we were prepared for. It was just a huge surprise, and it wasn't COVID related. And, I think that definitely changed everything in our lives, especially with my mental health and my family's, because my mom kind of was the glue that held everybody together. And so when that piece is missing, we all kind of have to do our part to figure out how to fill it. And I don't know if we've reached that just yet, but I try to always lead, just like Jessica says, in her honor, and share her legacy so people can vicariously live or experience her through me. So I'm always trying to carry her energy or what she wanted. And so some people definitely lose inspiration, lose motivation in what they're doing when someone passes away. But for me, I felt more energized and more motivated to continue the work that I was doing. And one of the biggest projects that I started myself, and I think it changed everything, was in May of 2020, when the pandemic kind of first started. I started Positive Vibes magazine, which is a digital magazine all about sharing stories of mental health and different things. I mean, we've definitely gone into different realms, but we've been able to feature people who do all sorts of alternative healing. If it's like angel healing, if it's holistic healing, some people are psychics. So very like different stories that are unique, but the commonality is they all have mental health. They all talk about mental health and they use these tools to support themselves and the people around them, which I absolutely love. And from that, I believe was the magazine that really trajected a huge step in being an advocate, because luckily in December, I applied for the first ever Mental Health Youth Action Forum, which was this cool event that MTV hosted or planned in collaboration with the White House and a lot of mental health organizations like Active Minds, Jet Foundation, some of the biggest mental health nonprofits out there. Luckily, I was chosen out of 30, and it was just an amazing opportunity in DC that we went to the White House to actually advocate for youth mental health. And we talked about disparities and the lack of mental health practitioners of color and intergenerational trauma. We talked about a lot of different things that impact a lot of young people. And it was just great to be there. And we got to speak, Selena Gomez was there speaking about her journey of mental health, because she's very authentically an advocate for mental health. Dr. Biden, First Lady, and Dr. Murthy, the Surgeon General. And at the end, President Biden did show up for a couple of minutes and talk to us for a little bit. So it was incredibly exciting to be in a space like that. I never thought I would be there. So that's my journey, what I've been up to so far.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And I like that you started with this idea that everyone should see a psychologist at some point in their life. And I feel that hit me in my heart, because I'm like, everyone should try therapy at least once. Like, that's my favorite thing to say, of some sort, just to understand that you don't necessarily need to be in that space because you're in a bad space. There's always something you might want to talk through in life. Whether it's just once or twice, I'm not saying you need to go forever and do it forever, but I like that idea of having an objective third party to kind of walk you through things or help you notice thought patterns or help you shift out of a space you might be in short term. I think that's really beautiful that's like kind of where you started, and what you've accomplished thus far is unbelievable. And I can only imagine this is just the beginning for you.
And he wrote this great article on Entrepreneur, right? About grief, loss.
Actually, I want to write something like that, especially because I don't think in the workplace we talk about grief. But I wrote one on mental health, and then I also wrote one on body discrimination. So I'm luckily through the magazine, being an entrepreneur for 2 years, I was lucky enough to land a writing spot on Entrepreneur, and I'm trying to write more about workplace wellness.
Fantastic.
I'm going to need everyone's LinkedIn profiles and all your websites and information here.
And I didn't read the bio, so I'm going to read them at the end. But should we jump to Salima?
I was going to say there's room for so much synergy here. There needs to be follow-up here.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I already have an invitation. I would love to invite you all to attend an experience that I facilitate for Doodling for Mental Health. Jessica has been to one of these, and this is something that I would really love to share with all of you at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Go ahead,
Your
Selena.
stories are very, very inspiring and very touching as well. My journey with mental health started very, very early on, although I didn't really know, because I think I know mental health looks different in different parts of the world. I was born and raised in Guinea in West Africa. And there, they don't talk to you about mental health. They just call you an angry child. They just call you names and just treat you like nonsense. So since I was 5, 6 years old, that's what I could remember. I didn't even know therapy was an option. I started this year, and it's still something very new to navigate for me. So from a very early age, it has been difficult to get to know myself, really, because all my thoughts were clouded by everybody else's thoughts about me. It was about judgment. It was about the external thoughts about who you are, what you do, why you do what you do. So I've had to make a decision at that same time about what I was going to do with my life. If I was going to let the thoughts guide who I was going to become, or if I was going to shut them down and just do what I wanted to do. And I chose the second option. I was like, you can do what you do, you can say what you say. I still got angry, I still got upset, I still had my attitude and whatever, but I decided that I was going to move in my direction, not in their direction. So when I came in the US 4 years ago, yeah, this year is my 4th year here. It was the first time I was really in my space because I felt not in my place before. And I was at an age where I had paved my way in a way where I could start to do my own stuff. So I started to look for ways and places where I could feel at home. And that's how I decided to create my nonprofit organization named Building a Brighter African Diaspora. Not only brighter in the way we do work and in the way we do work to develop the continent, but also the relationships between people of African descent, because that aspect of things was very important for me. I thought about things we used to do in the past, because when we talk about developing a continent, it's not only infrastructure, it's also about how people think. And that's actually what people say the most. We have to change the mentalities, but there's no inner work to change the mentalities. So the main thing that I said from the get-go, this is about having conversations. This is about bringing people of African descent together, reuniting the African diaspora and having all the difficult conversations. Some people of African descent who come from Africa think that people who are African American don't like them. And some people who are African American think that when you come from Africa, you don't like them. These are things that are taboo and no one talks about it. And then we say we want to develop a whole continent, but then we are excluding each other from each other's journeys. That's not going to happen, not on my watch. So that's how I created the organization. I've been operating for 2 years officially, although I started 4 years ago. And last month I got officially registered as a nonprofit organization, which I'm really happy about. Thank you. But this whole thing brought up something new for me, because that's it introduced, of course, leadership to me. I think we all have it in us. It's about how we choose to explore it. I started to explore it with BBAD, which is the acronym of my organization. I also joined student government in my previous campus, BMCC. Then I became student government president at City Tech. And now I'm the chairperson of the CUNY University Student Senate, which are all great responsibilities. So I start to see new things there when I start doing all these leadership positions. It starts becoming, I did all this work to be comfortable, to find my place, because I don't like when people trouble my space. I speak up when people trouble my space. But then you enter into important leadership positions and everybody expects you to act a certain way. And accountability starts looking differently, because as a leader, they expect all the faults to come on you. You're like a mother. But then we know how that works when you're a Black woman, the idea of the savior, right? When you are a Black Muslim African woman, a lot of different labels, all these different labels have their own struggles, because these are all minority labels, minority identities. So you come in a space and you see how people are treating you, how people are talking to you. And then the question starts to come. Is this something about leadership, or is it also about my identities? So these were the different questions I started raising. So I started looking around me. I started looking at people who were in these positions before. Okay, this person was also a Black woman, but she wasn't a Black woman from Africa. She wasn't Muslim. Okay, this was a Muslim guy. He wasn't a Black man and he wasn't a woman either. So what's going on here? So starting to be the first in these different positions, then I start wanting to speak up about things, because that's what I do. So my election, and I was speaking with Janine about this, lasted for 7 months, because different reasons people didn't want to elect me, and that never happened in the history of this institution. We're now celebrating 50 years, and it had never happened. So throughout the way, I'm talking about accountability, and I'm talking about these people, the administration, about what are you doing about your student leaders? This is me sitting with you and talking about it. What about all the other people who decide to take responsibility in CUNY? They decide to make change in CUNY. do you take into account what they're going through? Because every change comes with struggle for the person who wants to initiate the change. But then you are here and we don't really feel like you care. So what do we do about this? I'm still talking about this. I'm still having these conversations with these people. And like, I could very much relate to what Jessica was talking about. Every time you talk about something, they tell you about hierarchy and stuff. Thank God I'm in a very high leadership position now, so I can do more, I can speak more, and I have the network that is needed to make that change. But that's something I have been talking about with Janine. And my conversation with Janine actually was the introduction that this was something that I was aware of, because I was thinking about it, was on my mind, and I was talking about it, but I didn't realize the impact before that conversation. And last week I visited Brooklyn College and I was with the president of the college, and I was telling her this program that I'm starting in my college as student government president. I decided to start the SGA Leadership Academy. And then the idea is, well, they were asking what is it about and stuff. And I was telling them this is to make sure when students go into leadership positions, they know what they're signing up to. They have a community to support them. They have basic skills, basic guidance, and understanding that they are part of something, that they do not feel alone. And administrators and in all these conversations, they talk about difficult students sometimes, because it's true. We can be a pain. That is true. We want stuff, we want things to happen. Sometimes we want to make it happen too fast. And I was telling them, like I told everybody, but what is the support system you put in front of these students to make sure they don't get frustrated? Because it comes out of frustration. We keep asking you stuff 7,000 times. No one listens to us. At the end of the day, we use a new face to get what we want to see, to make happen what we want to see happen. So I was telling them, what if once a month or twice a month or once every 2 months, you met with these students to ask them how they are feeling, what's going on? And we, like in USS, I have to deal with all the 25 campuses. So 3 to 4 people from 25 campuses coming in the same meetings. Of course, conflicts are going to happen. Of course, we will be frustrated with each other. Of course, we will feel like sometimes Sally, the chair, is not listening to me. She's not doing this, she's not doing that. But if I know that on my campus, I have the support that I need, I may not take advantage. But the student at first came and said, hypothetically, these are counselors available on campus, and as student leaders, we want you to take advantage of this resource. We know there are counselors on campus, but then you come and extend the thing to us to show us we listen to you, your voice matters, and your feelings matter. Because when they pack, when we feel frustrated, it's the whole university that's going to suffer. Because CUNY is about shared governance. It's not only the administration that does the work, it's not only the board of trustees, it's everybody with the students included. So that's what I keep talking about to them when I meet them. That's part of my agenda as USS chair. And also for myself, because I feel like I've been through a lot and there was no follow-up. There are no concrete action steps. Someone before me went through something similar, yet no action steps were taken, and it just got worse with me. So I'm supposed to sit here and let the next person experience something similar, knowing that we are not only the student leadership positions we are in, we are also our past. We are also our personal lives. So you're coming with burden, with problems, with mental health issues that you want to deal with. Yet you push through and you want to make change. You want to use that as your power to keep going. And then this institution or this office you're working for, they're just, meh, it's fine. It doesn't work. So I guess that's what I have to say.
That's so powerful. And there's a question that I was going to throw to the panel a little bit later that you kind of touched on a little bit, which is that traits that you were told that were not good traits that made you seem like nonsense are actually the traits that are helping you lead and make change. And I think that's really powerful when we talk about how do we make meaning out of what we've gone through. It's how do we take those things that people told us we shouldn't have or we shouldn't be and use those to our advantage so that we're doing something meaningful. So thank you for really for sharing all of that. All of you have such powerful stories. I feel like I want to take on the whole entire world right now, to be honest with you all. And I'll just briefly give a little bit of background to myself and my story, and then I would love to like ask you all some questions. So like many of you, mental health seems to be the struggle, seems to be something that afflicted me at a young age. But I didn't really start finding myself in difficult positions like in treatment until probably high school. And what I noticed when I was in treatment was that my family and friends, they didn't know what to say or do for me. It's not that they didn't want to be there. It's just they didn't know how to talk about these things. And I noticed that they would step into my hospital room and look really unsure, or I would get together with friends and they would look at me like, we don't know how to talk to her anymore, because what do we say to someone who's been through something like that? And it's not that they didn't want to care for me, they just didn't know how. But what I did realize was that small gestures changed the game for me. So it was little things like my dad noticing in the hospital, the only time I ever engaged with any other person outside of myself was when we played Uno. As patients, they would give us an Uno deck. And so when I got out of treatment, I didn't really talk a whole lot, and he bought an Uno deck. So at night we would just play Uno together and we wouldn't say a word. We didn't talk, but that was the most connected I felt to another person during that time, because it was something that he noticed got me out of my own head and into the world again. He claims it's because I'm very competitive, and that might be true. I don't really like to lose. So even a game of Uno felt like high stakes at that moment. And then there were things like, my brother would email me, dating myself just a little bit. He would email links to YouTube videos of songs he thought I might like. And it was a song of the day. And it would be something either motivational or a song he was like, don't tell my friends that I listen to this artist, or things like that, where it was just, he engaged me because I always had headphones in. So he knew I'd always put on music. Or even a friend in college would put a bag of Lucky Charms, but only the marshmallow part, because that's the only good part of the cereal realistically, on my bed after treatment, because she knew it was going to be a long day and she knew it was something that I would enjoy. So it was those little moments where people showed that they loved and cared about me still, that were so impactful to let me know that my life still mattered. And so I took that idea and started my business with it. Essentially, I created mental health focused self-care boxes because I wanted people to have the opportunity to send that gesture to someone in their life, to let someone in their life know, look, I might not know what to say or do. I might say or do the wrong thing at times, but I love you and I want you to know that. And I'm going to keep trying to show up for you in any way that I can. And I coupled that with self-care products that really focus on connection, different sensory grounding techniques, or just ways to, shift the mind. And then finding creative outlets, because I think that's super important, to find a way to express yourself. Unlike Sophie, I have no artistic talent and would prefer to write all day, but I know that artistic ways to express yourself can come in a lot of different shapes and forms. So I try to include that all in my self-care boxes, and have really tried to create something that people can come back to time and time again when they're going through a tough time. And I send them in a literal box to make it like a toolbox, so that people know they can return to that toolbox whenever they need it. And that's essentially how I've taken something where I didn't know really what to do, and the people in my life didn't know what to do. And we're trying to reach back and make sure that other people don't have to suffer that same silence and lack of connection, and to give them an opportunity to kind of open the door for conversation. So that's really what I've created. And I feel very inspired to be in a room with people who have taken their struggles and made something really personal and meaningful from them. That feels like, this feels unbelievable that this is even happening right now.
Well, Mallory, I know we're short on time. Is there anything, one last little thing you want to throw out, and maybe we'll do this again?
Yeah, I mean, thank you all for taking the time to share your stories. I know you all do it fairly regularly at this point, but I never want to underestimate the strength that it takes to come on and share with strangers. So thank you all for taking the time out of your day to do that. I would love if all of you I'm going to put my email in the chat. If all of you could send me your address, I want to send each of you a self-care box. Because I want to thank you for being here and all the work that you're doing in the world. So send me your address where I can ship it to. I can ship internationally as well, so don't worry about that. And I want to send you all a box. So
Thank you.
it's
Wow,
my
Oh, that means
pleasure.
so much. And I
Yeah,
was
thank
thinking
you
about
so
it. I was
much.
like, after this, I want to buy a box.
Oh no, I got you. I'm gonna hook
Really
you up
need
here. Yeah.
It
Okay.
was so nice meeting you
So
all.
nice meeting all of
Yes,
you.
thank
Yes,
you.
likewise.
I knew you'd love each other.
This is great.
Speaking
This
of,
is great.
let's take
Oh yeah,
hold on, let's
picture.
take a picture.
Oh, take a picture.
Okay, wait a minute. I'll crop it. Okay, great.
Yay.
Perfect. Thank you for taking the time, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
This was
Really
great.
nice.
All right.
Yes, we're gonna talk soon.
Yes.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.